This story begins with a seemingly innocent act of kindness that quickly spirals into a harrowing tale of terror and psychological manipulation. In 1977, a young hitchhiker named Colleen Stan is making her way from Oregon to Westwood, California for a friend's birthday party. She's picked up by a friendly-seeming couple, Cameron and Janice Hooker, who are driving a van. Their conversation is light and easy, and Colleen feels at ease with them, especially when they mention they are headed in the same direction. The couple eventually convinces Colleen to take a short detour with them to see some nearby ice caves. What Colleen doesn't realize is that this detour is the beginning of a living nightmare. Once at the secluded site, Cameron's friendly demeanor vanishes. He brutally attacks Colleen, forcing a gag into her mouth and putting a heavy wooden box over her head. He then shoves her into a trunk and drives off, with Janice seemingly complicit in the whole ordeal. The reality of her situation becomes horrifyingly clear when they arrive at their house. Cameron reveals their plan to keep her as a slave, claiming they are part of a secret and powerful organization called the Company. He threatens Colleen, telling her that the Company has an extensive network and will hunt down and punish her and her family if she ever tries to escape. To sell this lie, he shows Colleen his wife Janice and tells her that Janice herself was a runaway slave whose legs were brutally injured by the Company. He claims he rescued her by buying her. Colleen's life is immediately reduced to one of unimaginable confinement and abuse. Cameron forces her to live in a small coffin-like box he keeps under his bed. She is only let out for a few hours each day to perform strenuous chores and is given the new name Kay. She is forced to address Cameron as master and Janice as ma'am, and is told she must always be respectful and obedient. Cameron makes her sign a contract claiming it formally registers her as his slave with the Company, a lie designed to strip away her hope of ever getting help from the outside world. He even brings up a fictional Company man who he claims is waiting upstairs to confirm her new status, a calculated move to reinforce her belief in the powerful organization that supposedly controls her fate. The years that follow are a blur of physical and psychological torture. Cameron's abuse is relentless and sadistic. He starves her, deprives her of sleep, and subjects her to daily beatings and sexual assault. The psychological manipulation is perhaps even more damaging. He constantly reinforces the myth of the Company, weaving elaborate and gruesome tales of what happens to runaway slaves. He claims they have operatives everywhere, including in law enforcement, and tells a terrifying story about a woman who had her limbs, eyes, and tongue removed for trying to escape. These stories are meant to break her spirit and convince her that escape is not only impossible but also a guarantee of a worse fate. Over time, the Hookers have 2 children, a daughter named Amber and a son named Bobby. Colleen is forced to take on the role of their caretaker, cleaning, cooking, and doing all the housework. Her life is a constant cycle of servitude and terror. She is a prisoner in plain sight, with her life revolving entirely around the whims and demands of her captors. As the years pass, the abuse wears her down. She struggles to maintain any sense of self, completely isolated and brainwashed by Cameron's elaborate lies. Janice, meanwhile, appears to grow increasingly conflicted. She struggles with her conscience and seems to feel guilty for her part in Colleen's suffering. The arrival of their children also seems to change her perspective. She often expresses discomfort with Cameron's cruelty and the way he treats Colleen. The tension between the couple grows, with Janice constantly questioning Cameron's actions. This internal conflict gives Colleen a glimmer of hope. She notices Janice's changing attitude and starts to see her not as an accomplice but as a potential ally. After 7 long years of captivity, a breaking point is reached. Janice finally decides to act. With Cameron out of the house, she tells Colleen that she can no longer participate in the abuse. She confesses her fear of Cameron and her desire to escape his control. She offers to help Colleen leave, an offer that seems too good to be true but that Colleen is desperate to believe. Janice takes Colleen to a bus station, gives her some money, and urges her to leave and never look back. It is a moment of pure, overwhelming freedom for Colleen. She boards the bus and finally escapes the confines of the Hookers' terrifying world. Once she is safe, Colleen goes to the police. The initial skepticism from law enforcement is high, but Colleen's detailed account and her clear emotional trauma eventually convince them. The discovery of a note from Janice in Colleen's belongings provides the final piece of evidence needed to justify an investigation. The police arrest Cameron and Janice Hooker. During the trial, Janice, now ready to break free from Cameron's control, confesses to her role in the kidnapping and abuse. She provides crucial testimony against her husband, detailing his sadistic behavior and the horrifying conditions of Colleen's imprisonment. Cameron Hooker is ultimately convicted of kidnapping, rape, and assault. He is sentenced to a staggering 104 years in prison for his horrific crimes. Janice receives a much lighter sentence as part of her plea deal for cooperating with the prosecution. Colleen Stan, though physically free, is left to deal with the immense emotional and psychological scars of her ordeal. Her story serves as a chilling testament to the power of psychological manipulation and the resilience of the human spirit. She eventually goes on to rebuild her life, but the trauma of those 7 years remains with her forever. The complex and twisted dynamics within the Hooker household, focusing on the psychological manipulation that has enslaved Colleen Stan, whom they have renamed Kay. One day, while working in the woods with Cameron, Colleen asks if she might ever be allowed to go home. Cameron, ever the master manipulator, claims that the Company would never trust a slave enough to let them go. However, he dangles a small sliver of hope by allowing her to write a letter home, a calculated move to keep her docile and obedient. A tense and emotional confrontation erupts between Cameron and Janice. Janice, visibly distraught, accuses Cameron of caring more about Colleen than he does about her. She confronts him about his ongoing abuse of Colleen, expressing her jealousy and pain. Cameron, trying to placate her, suggests they could share Colleen, a horrifying idea that sends Janice into a rage. She screams at him, reminding him of their marriage vows and the agreement they had. In a moment of rage and desperation, she demands that he put Colleen back in her box and never touch her again. Cameron, seeing Janice's breakdown, seemingly agrees to her demands. As time goes on, the relationship between Colleen and Janice becomes more complicated. Janice's conscience gnaws at her and she starts to feel empathy for Colleen. She begins to see Colleen not as a rival but as another victim of Cameron's abuse. She tries to connect with Colleen, even giving her a copy of the Bible and suggesting they read it together. She uses religious scripture to justify their situation, telling Colleen that they are like the biblical figures Sarah and Hagar and that they must learn to get along. Janice even tells Colleen to call her by her first name, Jan, instead of ma'am, signifying a shift in their dynamic. Cameron's cruelty, however, knows no bounds. He continues to exploit Colleen, even suggesting that they could have a baby together and that she could become his slave wife. He tells her that a man is entitled to more than one wife, using the Bible to justify his twisted desires. When Colleen expresses her trust issues with him and asks to see her family, he again falls back on the lie of the company, claiming they would never allow a slave to go home. He reveals to her that his sadistic tendencies started when he was a small boy and that he had been practicing bondage on Janice since they met. Colleen's life continues in a state of controlled torment, but the growing rift between Cameron and Janice offers a glimmer of hope. Janice's newfound compassion for Colleen is palpable. One day while Cameron is at work, Janice tells Colleen that she can no longer bear the situation and has decided to leave him, taking their daughter Amber with her. This is the moment Colleen has been waiting for. She pleads with Janice to help her escape, but Janice, still bound by her own fears and trauma, tells her that she has to leave alone. Just as Colleen is on the verge of giving up hope, Janice returns. She confesses to Colleen that she was afraid to leave her behind and that she will help her escape. She reveals a dark secret. She and Cameron had another victim before Colleen, a girl named Marlitz, whom Cameron also kept as a slave. Janice admits that when the girl would not stop screaming, they killed her and buried her in the woods. This shocking revelation makes Colleen realize the full extent of Cameron's depravity and the very real danger she is in. Colleen asks Janice about the company, to which Janice tearfully confesses that it never existed. The entire story was a lie, a tool of psychological control to keep Colleen from ever trying to escape. With this new terrifying knowledge, Colleen finally understands that her captor has no powerful organization backing him up and that her freedom is truly within her grasp. Janice takes her to a bus station and gives her money, urging her to get on the bus and never look back. Colleen is finally free, a survivor of a monstrous crime with the long and difficult road to recovery ahead of her. Following her dramatic escape, Colleen Stan contacts the police and tells them everything about her 7-year-long ordeal. Her harrowing account, corroborated by her visible physical and psychological trauma, leads to an investigation. Police eventually arrest Cameron Hooker. His wife Janice, who had been an accomplice for most of the time, agrees to a plea deal and cooperates with the police. She provides a detailed testimony against her husband, confirming the existence of their past victim, a woman named Marlitz, whom they murdered and buried. During the trial, Cameron Hooker is found guilty of kidnapping, rape, and sexual assault. He is sentenced to 104 years in prison. Janice Hooker is granted a lesser sentence due to her cooperation with the authorities. The conclusion of the film focuses on the emotional aftermath of Colleen's escape. She is reunited with her family and begins the difficult journey of rebuilding her life after her traumatic experience. The film ends on a somber note with an epilogue that reveals the real-life fate of the key players, reminding the audience that while the nightmare may be over for Colleen, the scars of her captivity will remain with her forever. If you enjoy watching this video, then subscribe to Angel Recaps for the latest movies explanation.